Welcome back. We're kicking off the week doing some crafting. I finally gotten around to making a pair of NG bracers so I can now use battle res. After which point we jump into raid for some bird prog before queuing up some keys with the squad. We've got a big week of outlaw keys ahead of us as we continue to work on and improve playing this spec. So we lock it in, it's episode 12 on our road to Mythic Plus title. And we're starting things off with a 27 AD. This week's affixes are Fortified, Incorporeal, and Sanguine. So not too much in the way of added difficulty from pull to pull, but with Sanguine healing some juiced up trash mobs, beating the timer becomes a lot more tedious. But looking at the AD, we're gonna get farmed by the first pull. Our tank opts to do a 3 caster pull, and while the remaining 4 of us are in comms coordinating stops as best we can, once one person dies, it just cascades. We don't make it much further past the first couple pulls before calling GG's and running back the 26. Where the tank we pick up does the same thing, and unsurprisingly, it goes equally poorly. Now, to be fair, I do think this pull is a lot more viable with a VDH and a pug setting because of how much mob control they bring, but our evoker doesn't a pressing roar the first sigil, and our warlock dies early on to a charge, so we run out of AoE stops way before the mobs are close to dying, and we're the ones that end up going down. Then a bit later, before the priestess boss, our tank goes long to gather a big pull but then falls over. The tank called out the healer for not keeping them up, but I think this one was the tank's fault. If you're gonna go deep to cook up a pull, I would think you should be able to survive for the duration. But we run it back, take down the priestess, then during Razan, our warlock is going to get slapped. And a little while later, I'm also going to go down after pulling threat on a pair of raptors. This was a bit unlucky since the tank had to run away for pursuit, and in that time I happened to rip threat. So we go again, kill Razan, and make our way to Yasma with about 4 minutes left. On Fortified, with Lust, we might have enough time, except we're going to lose our monk to a spider, and then B-res them into another spider, before eventually getting them up a second time. But not the last time, as they're going to proc one more spider towards the end of the fight. And at this point, we no longer have a battle res, so we claw our way across the finish line, but it's 32 seconds over the timer. Our healer was pretty bummed after this one, and to be fair, it's tough to say whether the monk's deaths may have been that 32 seconds of difference, but it's also important not to get hung up on it, especially because there was a lot more that went wrong in this key, which ultimately contributed to us missing the timer. So it's definitely a go next angle, which has us running a 26 way crest with a prot warrior for a change in pace. This run goes smooth up until the soul charmer pull before Lord and Lady Waycrest, because as we're cutting the mobs out of Sanguine, we're going to butt pull the second soul charmer in. And that is one too many stops for our comp. So we're going to run back a couple times this one as we jump from 3 to 14 deaths. But once we get through it, we zoom through the rest of the dungeon and finish the key with a minute to spare. Thanks, Lust.
Oh my god, we need percent.
Just kidding, we're short 1 count. But after taking out one of the doggos, we finish the key for real this time, 30 seconds under the timer. From there, we head into a 25 Darkheart, where we smash out the old press W type route, where we clear a lot of trash that I guess more modern routes tend to skip, like the Keeper packs for example. And while it goes well, with only 1 death, you can definitely see how routing this way does not leave much room on the timer. But it is enough as we kill Xavius with a minute and a half remaining. No way! No! Wait! The guy's RP! Bro!
No shot, really?
Wait, I mean we might make it. I'll have like a minute.
Oh my god.
Bear?
Yo. Guys,
Pull that slow, we didn't even percent.
Where are we going? Where are we going?
Run back in.
Oh, that's right. We have to run back in. What the fuck is going on?
We have time.
It was like a minute.
We don't play bears. No, no, wait. No. Oh, wait, we have to play. We have nothing.
Learn
They're.
everything. We have to play
We have to play fucking. Oh my god. Bro. Oh,
55 seconds to kill these
Just gotta
bears.
kill the one.
Man.
Except apparently we're short on count. And while we try to finish off one of the bears, we're not quick enough, leading to a deplete. I did feel for our tank a little. They apologized and immediately left. I'm sure they felt responsible for the outcome of this key. I doubt they'll see it, but if they were to watch this video, I'd want to encourage them and say that it's all good. If anything, just use this experience to figure out what needs to be done differently. Where can I make up for the miscount? Maybe I can optimize the route and play around the Rogue's Shroud. But that key is going to turn into a 24 Black Rook, which we're going to 2-chest before calling it a night. We have some more bird prog the next day before we jump into a 27 fall, with a lot of the same team from yesterday. We're going to have a very smooth run. Now, because I'm playing Outlaw, during the final boss, the Evoker and Hunter are mindful to hold cooldowns plus Lust for the burn phase, to make up for my lack of burst damage. Which they do well, but just as we're about to phase the boss, this happens. Get him up. Ooh, yeah, it would just be me. I don't think I do. I don't think it's worth. So when our Evoker died, I was the only one in our party with a B-res, but I made the call not to get them back up, thinking it wasn't worth the downtime. It was a tough call and was probably the wrong decision. Fuck, man. Oh my god, dude. So that's tilting then. Fuck. So initially, I wasn't going to include my reaction because I'm pretty disappointed with the way I reacted here. But I decided to keep it in because the point of the series isn't to showcase myself as a perfect human being that cruises to title. I want to be fully transparent and just put everything out there. That said, this is a peak example of how not to react when playing in comps. Being frustrated is fine, but venting in front of people to that extent is not it. Now, I'm pretty sure it stems from my headspace at the time. Since swapping to Outlaw, I hadn't timed many IO keys. And with the title cutoff being close to 3,500 at this point, I felt like I wasn't doing enough to close that gap. And so I was starting to feel kinda desperate, which is never a good place to be. At the end of the day, if I hope to hit title, the reality of it is that the season end is still a long ways out. Rather than fixate solely on trying to increase my IO, I should prioritize just trying to get better. I believe that if I can manage that, the results should follow. Anyways, afterwards we're going to tackle a 27 rise. But we're going to brick this one pretty quick, as our tank goes down on the second trash pull. We try to recover, but it's a lost cause, so we call key there. We end up running back the 26 fall, which we manage to time before heading into a 25 throne. Having a very clean run, up until the Aquamage pack before the final boss. Because our Evoker is going to get Aqua Blasted, and if you look at our comp, we don't have a lot of stops without our AUG there. So casts start going off, and we're going to have a full wipe to this pull. We try to run back into it, but it's not clean, and after a few more deaths, our pally then dips out. That's our final key for the night, but we're back the next day with a quick warm-up key where I discover some weird Outlaw interactions. Now, I had probably experienced these before to some extent, but it was particularly bad in this key, and the keys that follow. I'll show some examples of what I mean. Good investigation. Why is it on cooldown, man? Ain't no way. So if you haven't noticed, or maybe aren't as familiar with Outlaw, I kept encountering instances where my Between the Eyes would go on cooldown when I wouldn't expect it to. For now, keep this in mind, we'll come back to it later. Afterwards, we plug into a 27 Waycrest, where it's smooth sailing until we butt pull Ral. But after running it back, we only have one more death for the rest of the key, and we beat the timer by nearly 4 minutes, netting ourselves a 9 Mythic Plus score. From there, we queue into a 27 fall, and we're going to blast this key, engaging Iridicron with just over 10 minutes remaining. Except that on one of the Extinction Blast casts, our druid has a mega brain fart and runs out of the bubble, meaning they're very dead. And with only 4 people soaking, Chromie is also going to go down. However, this group has good comms. The Pally B-reses the druid, and the tank tells us not to release so that the druid can take the battle res after the boss resets to res our group and save us the time of needing to run back. Except then the tank releases? I imagine this was an accident, so I run back to try and shroud them through, but they end up death skipping. Once they're back, we engage Iridicron for a second time with 6 minutes left, which is kinda tight.
No way. Why does it bug out like that? No way, dude. It did it again, man.
But, and even with a full Earth Surge phase at 90.1%, we have enough time and push Iridicron into the burn phase.
Oh my god. Holy fuck. Oh, that was so close.
And we did it, although just barely, gaining another 9 Mythic plus score. In timing this run, the keyholder procced a 28 Dark Heart, which we sent with the same group. Now, this run went super smooth.
What the hell? Why did it put it on cooldown? I don't know. This spec doesn't make any sense.
And before we see what comes of this dungeon, I think it's about time I explain what's going on here in these clips I've shown. As it turns out, Outlaw is a very buggy spec. There are quite a few minor, weird interactions that, if you don't know of, will lead to some of the scenarios we've seen so far. One of these bugs is that using a trinket from stealth doesn't grant your subterfuge window. And in this case, my first global out of stealth is Shift 4, which is a macro with Echoing Reprimand and my trinket. So that explains a few of the cases. But there have also been examples of this. Here apparently, if you press Shadow Dance too quickly after your subterfuge window ends, Crackshot doesn't activate, which means Between the Eyes goes on cooldown. Learning all of this for the first time was eye-opening to me, so if you're an Outlaw Rogue and aren't aware of these things, here's a list of bugs as taken from the Rogue Discord. Anyways, back to the key. We're going to have a few more deaths to the slimes, myself included. I don't press a defensive, which on a 28 fortified is not ideal. A little while later then, after Dressaron, we play a pack of 4 bats into a double caster, double stalker pack. We all stack up to prevent the stalkers from jumping around, but once Sanguine breaks out, we're forced to move and we end up losing some people to these mobs. Our Boomy also dies right at the tail end of the pull, which is really unfortunate because the DH and I don't have a way to res. Thankfully, however, the Shaman onks and gets our group back up. Then on Xavius at the halfway point, we lose our Shaman and then Druid, expending our final battle reses to get them back up. Which, unfortunately, it turns out we needed. As our Druid goes down to a swirly, then after the boss reaches 10 stacks of Apocalypse, so does our Shaman, then Retpal, and then myself. We don't have enough time, so that's GG. That's it for the day, but we're back later in the week for one final set of push keys before the reset, starting things off with a 27 Everbloom. For this one, we're going to fast forward to the second boss, where we end up losing the mage to a stray bolt. But we have B-res, and at this point Telu is nearly dead, so we get through the rest of the fight without much issue. And as it turns out, that's going to be our only death for the entire run. Everbloom is a tough dungeon, but we smashed it, pushing our rating to 3462. From there, we managed to queue into a 28 Blackrook, queuing up with the DH tank Skinner, who, shout out to him, actually recognized me from the series. So that was pretty cool, although this key turns out to not be very cool, as we're going to chain die to the trash after the second boss. We were consistently losing one person early on to each pull, which consequently made each pull many times more difficult. And after 17 deaths in this area, we don't think it's still possible, so GG's is called. We're then going to link back up with some of the squad and run a 26 AD, pugging a tank to fill out the group. And well, the tank has an agenda of their own, as they do a giga pull at the start of the dungeon. and we're going to have a giga wipe, racking up 16 deaths. So we start the dungeon 3.5 minutes later, and we continue to have a rough go of things. It takes us 10 minutes to get to the priestess, but we play on, when later during Volcal, nobody is going to kick the boss, which takes us out. In hindsight, I definitely could have kicked, it was right next to me after all, but I don't know, I've never really thought to kick it. In nearly every AD I've done, it's something the tank or healer pretty consistently takes care of. But at the very least, I guess it couldn't hurt to set it as my focus target. So we deplete the key, then run a 26 fall, followed by the now 25 AD. Both these runs aren't super clean, but we time both and proc a couple 27s to try out. Kicking things off with a 27 throne. We play the hallway trash remarkably well, but then we have nearly a full wipe to the first pull afterwards. We lose a decent amount of time to this, and a few additional deaths follow. But we make it to the first boss around 11:30, which, to be honest, I'm actually not sure what the boss splits should be like in this dungeon. So, who knows, maybe it's still possible. But then I'm going to get meleeed by a guard. It seems I haven't yet learned my lesson after the last episode, and our Shadow Priest gets bolted. None of our remaining alive party members have a means to battle res, so unfortunately we're going to run out. And that's key. Next we try 27 Darkheart. On the first pull, we're going to run in and have both our Shadow Priest and Hunter pop cooldowns and instantly die. So this pull takes us a healthy while to get through, and this sets the stage pretty well for this run, as we have a bunch of trash deaths. Myself included in the mix, as I'm going to get popped by a mushroom. It didn't look like I was in range of it, but it definitely got me. Despite these deaths, we were zooming, and were able to have a pretty clean Xavius kill, timing the key with 2 minutes to spare. That key turns into a 28 fall, so in we go. But this one is fairly short-lived. On the first boss, our healer goes down to an orb, and then while the other rogue is trying to B-res them, they get channeled on by the Chrono Weaver into a spinny boy. So I then pick up the healer, thinking maybe we can foreman the rest of the fight, except our tank then dies and we wipe. So we run it back. Because we have 2 rogues, we can just press Shroud again. And on the following attempt, well, here's how that goes.
Oh fuck. Oh, I should have cloaked.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Unlucky. Now what? It would be res? What do
No,
we
I
get
sent
for
it. I sent it.
That's-
Oh, I just fucking did something really bad too.
Dude.
Whatever.
Yay.
27?
To nobody's surprise, we deplete the key. After a quick break, we're going to run a few more keys before the reset, but none of which are potential rating keys, and nothing super interesting happens, maybe aside from running a triple rogue 24 Darkheart. So while this one plays on screen, we're going to wrap up the episode here. If you enjoyed, consider dropping a like and subscribing. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.